Yeah, sir. You might want to send a maintenance man over to that office across the way. The lights are off and they must be looking for a fuse box or something because them flashlights, they're keeping me awake. Thank you. Good night.
On June 17, 1972, a security guard by the name of Frank Willis found a piece of tape preventing the basement door from closing at the Watergate building. He called the police. After the police arrived, 5 men were found inside the offices of the Democratic National Committee headquarters. The 5 men were then arrested. The 5 burglars were later identified as Bernard Barker, Virgilio Gonzalez, Eugenio Martinez, Frank Sturgis, and James W. McCord Jr., all working on the committee to re-elect President Nixon. Later that year, on November 11, 1972, Richard Nixon is re-elected.
On January 8, 1973, the trial of the Watergate burglars began. During the investigation, E. Howard Hunt pleads guilty to 6 counts, stating no higher-ups were involved in any conspiracy. The 4 Cubans, Barker, Gonzalez, Martinez, and Sturgis, pled guilty. On July 23, 1973, the Watergate Committee and Special Prosecutor Cox demand Nixon to surrender certain tapes and documents. Nixon refused to surrender the tapes, claiming he had executive privileges because he is the president. Nixon refuses to comply and releases his statement explaining to the nation that he is not a crook.
But in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
The Senate committee then takes legal action. Nixon addressed the nation a second time concerning Watergate. He explains his claim of executive privilege and why the tapes should not be turned over to the committee and what us as a nation should be focusing on.
But as the weeks have gone by, it has become clear that both the hearings themselves and some of the commentaries on them have become increasingly absorbed in an effort to implicate the president personally in the illegal activities that took place. Because the abuses occurred during my administration and in the campaign for my re-election, I accept full responsibility for them. I regret that these events took place, and I do not question the right of a Senate committee to investigate charges made against the president to the extent that this is relevant to legislative duties. However, it is my constitutional responsibility to defend the integrity of this great office against false charges. I also believe that it is important to address the overriding question of what we as a nation can learn from this experience. I was determined that we should get to the bottom of the matter and that the truth should be fully brought out no matter who was involved. At the same time, I was determined not to take precipitate action and to avoid, if at all possible, any action that would appear to reflect on innocent people. I wanted to be fair.
On February 6, 1974, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a treaty to have legal action to place impeachment charges towards Nixon. Nixon had no choice but to comply. On March 1st, the grand jury in Washington, D.C. confronted several of Nixon's aides about the scandal. With the information they got, Nixon was named the unindicted co-conspirator. Nixon's other aides had to decide which tapes to release to the media. One tape, named The Smoking Gun, consisted of Nixon explaining how the cover-up of the break-in would take place. With this information out to the public, Nixon had no choice but to resign his presidency.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office. As I recall the high hopes for America with which we began this second term, I feel a great sadness that I will not be here in this office working on your behalf to achieve those hopes in the next 2.5 years. But in turning over direction of the government to Vice President Ford, I know, as I told the nation when I nominated him for that office 10 months ago, that the leadership of America will be in good hands.